The same day that all of that went down, appropriately enough, Alveda King, the 75-year-old niece of the civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr., went scorched earth on the Southern Poverty Law Center, tearing into them in front of the House Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, demanding answers to the explosive allegations that that nonprofit, with hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, had been secretly bankrolling the very extremist that it claimed to fight. Ms. King told our lawmakers in Congress, "I am troubled by the conduct and messaging of organizations that claim to fight hatred while profiteering from division." Amen. She was referring to the indictment against the SPLC, alleging that individuals in the very organizations that the Southern Poverty Law Center itself had labeled as hate groups, including white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and the Ku Klux Klan, had received hundreds of thousands of dollars in donor money, and in some cases more than $1 million in payments to stay in those hate groups, to recruit others into joining them, to organize racist rallies, and to burn Klan crosses, etc., to which Ms. King said, "Americans who faithfully donate their hard-earned money, many of them senior citizens like me, deserve transparency and accountability about how those funds are being used." Her rebuke carried unmistakable moral weight coming from Ms. King, whose family legacy is a living testament to America's history on legitimate race issues, not a legacy of profiteering off of manufactured hate. In fact, Ms. King's lineage is the story of America. Her grandmother's roots trace back to the west coast of Africa. Her grandfather's family came from Ireland, like a branch of my own. Her mother carried the blood of the Cherokee people. Her uncle gave his life for civil rights. So she knows something about real hatred and about fighting it honestly and with morals from the high ground and for the right reasons. Her family is a testimony of the truth that she declared in our hallowed halls of Congress, saying, "America is not a collection of competing tribes. America is one people under God." Amen. But the SPLC's lack of that kind of admirable character has been known well before being recently called out. In 2019, their co-founder, Morris Dees, was ousted over the allegations of his sexual harassment and racial discrimination within the SPLC itself. An extraordinary scandal for a group that built its brand on the claim of fighting bigotry as they perpetrated it within. But the reality was that dozens of staffers signed a letter warning that the workplace culture inside the SPLC contradicted its public mission. A misogynistic bigot who founds a non-profit to supposedly fight bigotry is the definition of a race hustler. Meanwhile, both former employees and investigative reporters have accused the SPLC of operating what Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio openly called a scam by using deliberately inflammatory hate group designations, which they arbitrarily decide on, to drive fundraising for themselves rather than to actually combat genuine extremism. Credible critics like Ayan Hirsi Ali have accused the SPLC of weaponizing its hate group list against mainstream conservatives and religious organizations and anyone else that they personally disagreed with. And that accusation is entirely deserved and backed up by the receipts. For example, they disagreed with Ms. Ali for speaking about her first-hand experience with female genital mutilation and terrorism within the radical Islamic world, in which she grew up as a part. But they proudly lumped everyone that they looked down their noses at in with actual neo-Nazis and radical white supremacist groups, including her, endangering those that they falsely accused, doing so in a time of rising political violence thanks to reckless people like them, and perpetrating all of this injustice merely to suppress any political opposition under the guise of civil rights work. They hijacked the things that Mr. King did and hid behind his skirts to do the exact opposite. Miss King was having none of it and did not mince words on that score either, stating as clearly as her uncles called that all people should be judged individually based on the content of their character and not judged collectively on the basis of their meaningless skin color. When she declared, "I reject racism, I reject hatred, I reject white supremacy, but I also reject the notion that Americans who hold traditional Christian beliefs should be treated as threats or terrorists simply because we disagree with a prevailing political thought." Amen? I'm getting ready for a black revival here if she keeps going. Miss King, a former Georgia state legislator and founder of Alveda King's Ministries, closed with a salute to her uncle's most famous speech of all, saying, "Today I still have a dream. I dream that one day we will move beyond black power and white power and embrace God's power and human dignity. We must speak out for truth and against the forces that would manufacture hate, fear, division, and violence simply to line their pockets and further their political ambitions." Amen? How sad is it that her uncle, who would have wholeheartedly agreed with that statement, would never have anticipated who it would be directed towards? Let that be a wake-up call to everyone. Individuals, organizations, political parties, to remember who the hell you are and to look in the mirror instead of pointing fingers. See if you even recognize yourselves anymore after all of the things you have done and supported in the name of your team. Seriously, step into your bathroom for a moment and look into the mirror. Are you even still you anymore after doing that again and again? Go home.